Someone make it make sense.
Probably a couple.
Hello, everybody, and happy almost Thanksgiving part of November. For those of you guys who celebrate, November went by super fast for me. How about y'all? Hey, speaking of things happening super fast, here we go. This was just filed and just came out. I remember I was at work and I saw a YouTube notification and I was like, holy shit, here it is. And here's the thing. This is kind of like one of those things that, like, you know, we all were excited for this to happen and waiting for it to happen and wondering when it would happen. And like, you know, anyway, I feel like this was one of those things that didn't seem real until it was filed and I couldn't believe it. Also, timing wise, I don't think it was an accident that one day before this came out, right? We had the attorney who is apparently unnamed, who's representing like the McAlberts et al., like the entire group, coming out and saying to the media that they intend to file a defamation suit against Karen Read. And no actual suit, no actual complaint filed, right? Just a statement. And that happened one day before this. So, and actually this was filed on the 17th. So you know what? This was filed on the same day that they released that statement to the media, but we just didn't know about it yet because it didn't come out until the 18th. So, you know, given the fact that they didn't actually name the attorney, and given the fact that this unnamed attorney is apparently representing a group of like 5 of them, which doesn't really make any sense for a number of reasons, I have to wonder if that was not planned, but really reactionary, knowing that this complaint was about to drop, in terms of trying to thwart what will be alleged in this complaint. And as we always say, right, you know, it's allegations and shade, right, when you have civil complaints. And the thing that I love about this, I did a cursory look. I went through the first couple of pages. There's a lot of shade. There's a lot of really brilliant shade, well done, beautiful shade. It's just exquisite. And so the shade is, I mean, there's the allegations, right? Which is one thing. But the shade. As far as the allegations go, some of the reasons, well, there's a lot of reasons, but why this for me was like such a big deal, I'm sure for many of you guys, right, was like, first of all, in terms of the factual basis of the allegations, I thought to myself, and I think this ended up being true, that we are going to learn so much, right? Because there's so much that couldn't come in the criminal trial. And there's also a lot that's been happening behind the scenes since then. So in terms of like all of the things that maybe Karen Read wished she could have said if she took the stand, and maybe things that they kind of could have hinted at during the criminal trial in terms of the defense, but couldn't really state explicitly outright, you know, like all that's going to be fair game here. So there's that. Like, we're going to, like, in other words, to my mind, it's like, we're going to really see point blank, what is their theory of the case that they had, but didn't go fully into for the second criminal trial for reasons that we all know. You know, it was a smart choice, right? Not taking on too much of a burden with the third party culprit and all that. So there's that. And then also the discovery, right? The thing that's going to be so huge for this is because many of you guys might be aware, but in civil trials, or in, you know, civil litigation, even whether or not it's going to go to trial or settle, what have you, the discovery. So that's one of the great benefits and gifts, if you will, of civil litigation, is because of the discovery. It is broad, it is wide, it is immense. And we are going to learn so much through the depositions that will take place, the depositions and just the discovery. I mean, we also have again, so many new things have happened since her second trial. It's just going to be insane. It's going to be insane. So So, okay, so this is probably going to be a two-parter, but let's go ahead and get started here. Let me just check something real quick here. Okay. So, all right. So the first thing that caught my eye was the venue, which we'll get to that more later here in an explanation of. But it's Bristol. It's being filed in Bristol Superior Court, not Norfolk, which, I think was smart. But I was like, Bristol. Why Bristol? Well, we will learn more later, because that was immediately, I was like, oh, interesting for the venue there. So we've got Karen Reed, plaintiff, versus Michael Proctor in his personal capacity, Sergeant Yuri Buchanan in his personal capacity, Lieutenant Brian Tully in his personal capacity, Brian Albert, Nicole Albert, Jennifer McCabe, Matthew McCabe, and Brian Higgins. And we have our very first footnote of this filing with the word defendants. Let's take a look at that footnote. And if memory serves, this might be one of the first. Okay, yeah, so there's the footnote. The Massachusetts State Police and Town of Canton will be added as defendants after presentment is made pursuant to general laws. So this is why in the thumbnail, for anyone who saw it, I named these defendants, but then I said like this is just the start, right? Because there's going to be more to come. It's going to be so epic, guys. It's going to be so epic. And then we get to complaint, footnote 2. Footnote 2 stating plaintiff intends to move to consolidate this action with the related action estate of John O'Keefe et al. And we were expecting this, right? Okay. Town of Canton and the Massachusetts State Police. Right. Well, it's in, I think that actually comes up. Thank you for that. Need some Z saying that Karen lives in Bristol County. Right. I think that's actually we're going to get to that when we get to the venue, because that's going to have to be stated. I think they actually state that. But if you're going in order reading from the beginning, you wouldn't know that till you get there. Right. So like just at the first glance, like I'm like, oh, Bristol. Right. I mean, I guess in my mind, I like figured it's probably because that's where Karen Reed lives, but I know because this is how it works with these pleadings, that they have to state why they're choosing the venue that they're choosing. And for civil suits, in terms of venue, there's a number of ways you can go about it. That's why it's interesting, right? It's not just point blank, blah, blah. Like whoever is the plaintiff bringing the complaint has options for where they can choose to have the venue. It can be where the plaintiff resides. It could be where the defendant resides. It could be where, let's just say, an event took place that was in neither of those jurisdictions. Then they could choose that place. Great example, Depp v. Heard, right? They ended up choosing that venue. God, I can't remember. What was it? I'm trying to even remember how they ended up in Virginia. It's been so long since I've thought about it. But basically, the venue that they went with had nothing to do with either of them in terms of where they live or anything like that. It was for, God, I can't remember what reason it was. Someone in the chat will hopefully can remind me how they ended up in Virginia, but they chose that venue on purpose. So you have options, and it's a sort of a strategy, right? But I have to say also, I'm sure that, part of this too was like, not just for convenience because Karen Reed lives there, right? I mean, if you're Karen Reed, it's like, okay, well, let's look at our options. Well, pretty much everything else, on the surface is going to be Norfolk County, right? For the most part, or unless you want to go like whatever county Sandwich is in, or Suffolk County, perhaps. But Bristol was a smart choice. Just hopefully we'll get some better or fairer judges there happening. So, okay. So the complaint, here we go. Introduction. Here we go, guys. For 3.5 years, plaintiff Karen Reed was wrongly accused of homicide and subjected to suspicion, arrest, 2 prosecutions, and public condemnation, all resulting from the gross misconduct of the Massachusetts State Police, MSP, and those working in tandem with the MSP to shield from liability the party or parties responsible for the death of Boston police officer John O'Keefe III. Now, after being acquitted of all charges relating to Mr. O'Keefe's death, Ms. Reed brings this action to recover for and address the actions of those actually involved in Mr. O'Keefe's death and the law enforcement officers who objectively failed to ensure that justice was sought and served in the aftermath of January 29th, 2022. Karen Reed did not kill her then boyfriend, Mr. O'Keefe. Rather, In the early morning hours of January 29th, Mr. O'Keefe was killed in Defendants, Brian and Nicole Albert's home at 34 Fairview Road in Canton, quote, house, end quote, in an altercation during a late night house party with other defendants, collectively the house defendants. Okay, this for me is, in my just personal opinion, the first beautiful, amazing moment of shade. Now it's great because it's shade, in my view, that's like dressed in also being practical, right? Like, but it's so funny because the number of times we're going to see the term house defendants with capital H, capital D in this filing, we should actually count. That would be hilarious. We're going to count. So the house defendants, I mean, it's practical. It makes sense, but also there's some element to me. It just sounds, I don't know why. I just find it really funny. I find it really funny. The house defendants. So we're going to make a counter for this though. Let's see here. House defendants counter. So we're at our first count. Perfect. All right. So, all right, the house defendants. After a night of heavy drinking, the house defendants, oh boy, you know what? I might have bitten off more than I can chew with this because I wasn't joking when I said it happens a ton. I mean, right where I have it right now, I already see two more. So I'm gonna go ahead and just make this 3 to save myself another having to pull this up. Okay. All right, the house defendants responsible for Mr. O'Keefe's death, some of whom had professional experience with police investigations, concocted a plan immediately after the altercation to avoid culpability and to frame Karen Read. Rather than call first responders for help among the other actions, the House defendants conducted a Google search for information about, quote, Haas Long to die in the cold, end quote, moved Mr. O'Keefe's body outside and placed him on the Alberts front lawn near the road to make it look like Mr. O'Keefe was hit by a vehicle and that he died in the snow without ever coming into the house that night. Mr. O'Keefe's body remained on the Alberts lawn until Karen Read found him later in the morning. From the beginning, investigators from the MSP allowed the House defendants to direct the investigation away from themselves and toward Miss Read. The House defendants were a well-connected and close social group with strong ties to law enforcement. The Alberts are a prominent family in Canton, and the investigating police officers knew them well. The lead investigator for MSP, Michael Proctor, grew up in Canton and resides there to this day. He has been and remains close personal friends with the Albert family. House defendant Brian Albert was an agent, House defendant Brian Albert was a longtime Boston Police Department officer, and House defendant Brian Higgins was an agent with the ATF. And I'm just updating my ticker. Okay. According to the unwritten rule of, quote, protecting their own, end quote, Proctor and his MSP colleagues intentionally disregarded the obvious and compelling evidence tying the House defendants to Mr. O'Keefe's murder. Specifically, Mr. O'Keefe's injuries were consistent with a physical altercation. He had bruises and lacerations on his face and a deep gash to the back of the head, suggesting that he was punched and fell backwards, hitting his head on a ridged surface. He also had dog bite wounds and scratches on his right arm and forearm. Equally evident, Mr. O'Keefe did not have a single injury consistent with being struck by a vehicle. He did not have any broken bones or even a bruise on his leg, feet, arms, shoulders, torso, back, ribs, or anywhere below his neck that a medical examiner would otherwise expect to find a person struck and killed by an impact from a 3-ton vehicle. And to erase any doubt, the Commonwealth's own medical examiner, the pathologist who conducted the autopsy for the Commonwealth, concluded that Mr. O'Keefe's body showed no signs of a vehicular strike. Despite that, Proctor and others shielded the House defendants by intentionally sidestepping fundamental investigatory procedures. Propelled by the House defendants' false statements, including that Mr. O'Keefe never went into the house. Okay. So, first of all, when I, again, cursory took a look at the first little bit here earlier, I had flashbacks. Did anyone else have flashbacks to the first trial? As soon as I got here. Propelled by the House defendants' false statements, including that Mr. O'Keefe never went into the house, immediately I was like, oh my gosh, yes. because you know what we didn't get to see in trial number 2 was Matt McCabe's testimony. So I actually have this queued up and ready to go, just to for anyone who didn't watch the first trial, or for those who did and want a little moment here of Matt McCabe like squirming and dying on the stand. And also because it is so relevant to what we are reading, literally. Okay, here we go. Stianetti.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. McCabe, when we broke, I was just about to ask you about the last exchange here. You will agree with me that on February 1st of 2022 at 12:51 and 49 seconds, you texted the group chat to say, ask Chris to ask some questions, correct?
Yep, I'm reading it right now. Yes, that's correct.
And who was the Chris you were
So
referring to?
just to reorient everybody, this is after he already had all the other, his testimony, the whole thing with the flashlight and the squinting and with the text messages. So this is the point where he's already sweating, he's already red, he's already a disaster. He's already got the phone out with the flashlight, and he got his reading glass, all of it. So this is towards like the end part of like the biggest crash and burn of his testimony on cross. So he's already floundering up there with his stupid flashlight on the cell phone and all that.
That would be Chris Albert.
Brian's brother, correct?
That is correct.
And then you texted your wife, Brian Albert, and Nicole Albert, quote, tell them the guy never went in the house, correct?
Yeah, that's part of the same text. Yes.
Mr. McCabe, who was the guy that you were referring to?
Oh my God.
Does he have a name?
That would be John O'Keefe.
When you told the group to tell them the guy never went in the house, that was you talking about how you should all get your stories straight, correct?
No.
You would agree with me that your stories are all straight in terms of the guy never went in the house, correct?
Objection.
Can you answer that?
John never went in the house. It's not a story, it's a fact.
Well, when you said, tell them the guy never went in the house, Brian Albert was on that exchange still, was he not? He was still part of the group text?
Yes, Brian is on the exchange.
And
So that was the relevant portion there, obviously, with the whole thing. I mean, that text is so damning. To me, it's one of the easier parts because there's just so much in terms of, pointing to a cover up and and all of it, the third party culprits. There's just so much. But that part, that text that he sent right there is an easy one to sort of get, overlooked in the midst of everything else. But when you think about it, that is one of the most damning, and to me, like in terms of the McAlberts, right? I mean, I remember when this came out in the first trial, and I just was like, holy shit. Like that is, I mean, okay. Imagine this was a murder trial. Okay. And imagine that Matt McCabe was the defendant. Okay. And that text came out. I mean, if he was a defendant on trial for murder pick anybody, pick any defendant on trial for murder, and then they had a text like that, tell them that person never came in the house. It's like, that would be like a strong piece of circumstantial evidence, right? Anyways, so just saying. All right, let me go back to the pleading here. Okay. Yes, so including Mr. O'Keefe, quote, never went into the house, end quote. Proctor reported in text messages just hours into the investigation that the House defendants weren't going to get any shit for this because he's, Brian Albert, a Boston cop, and that Proctor was determined to make the investigation cut and dry by bringing charges against the girl. Indeed, Proctor made his intentions clear in writing. Karen Reed had zero chance of skating. She's fucked. This pronouncement was a mere 16 hours after Mr. O'Keefe's body was discovered on the Alberts lawn, and Proctor had not even walked into the house. Yeah. True to his promise, Proctor and his colleagues did not search the house for blood evidence resulting from the gash. I mean, there's some great shade right there, right? I'm just not to just keep reading and plowing through. True to his promise. I love this because here's the thing. It's like Proctor, okay. It's like Proctor has like literally nothing for ethics, integrity, obviously, right? I mean, he's just, you can't, like, this is just the sarcasm and the shade here. Like potentially like the only promise that Proctor made that he actually made good on, right, was like the promise to like this, not search the house for blood evidence. You know what I mean? Like true to his promise, but like, man, right? It's like the one time they might say that about Proctor, and it's, yeah. True to his promise, Proctor and his colleagues did not search the house for blood evidence resulting from the gash to the back of Mr. O'Keefe's head, or for fingerprints, or for DNA evidence. Proctor did not search the house despite the fact that Mr. O'Keefe was discovered without a winter coat, without the hat that several witnesses said he had been wearing that night, and without his left shoe. At Proctor's discretion, the house was never processed by a criminalist or even photographed. No member of the MSP, including Proctor, set foot inside 34 Fairview for nearly a week. The police did not examine or take evidence from the Alberts' German Shepherd, shout out Chloe, that was in the house on January 29th, a dog that had a history of attacking other dogs and people. Neither Proctor nor any of the MSP troopers conducted physical examinations of the house defendants for evidence of involvement in the altercation, such as marks on their hands, knuckles, or face, or bruises on their body. It's like when I read this, I'm like, I find it laughable. Like, why would anyone think they would, right? Like, if you know the case, it's like, of course they didn't. They didn't. I mean, it's like we're such a far cry in terms of this investigation, if you can even call it that, such a far cry from ever a thought of like looking at any of the house defendants for like bruises on their knuckles, or like, it's like, that's like a million life years away, right? In terms of what they did and didn't do, really, rather. But I'm trying to keep in mind too, right? Like, remember, this is being presented, this is the factual basis that takes the, working on, it has to work on the presumption that, who had the reader, in this case, it would be like the court, and also the, wherever this ends up, being filed, I guess, in the, what should we call it, Bristol Superior Court. But, you have to go ahead and work on the assumption that you're getting someone familiar with the case as if they don't already know the facts of the case. And who knows if whoever ends up being, the judge on this does or does not, potentially if their motion is granted, it could get consolidated with the wrongful death claim. And then that judge could be the one who's reading this. But nonetheless, it's just funny because I'm reading this and I'm like, of course they didn't. But it's like, oh yeah, some people might think that they would assume that they should have, right? And then be surprised that they didn't. So. They did not seize or search the house defendants' phones. They conducted only perfunctory, unrecorded conversations with Proctor's friends and acquaintances without any attempt to corroborate their stories. They permitted would-be witnesses to communicate with each other and coordinate their stories before any formal interviews. They allowed critical evidence to be manipulated in some instances and outright destroyed in others. In short, by focusing the investigation solely on Miss Reed as implicitly directed by the house defendants through the misrepresentations they made to police, Proctor and his colleagues disregarded and failed to obtain pertinent interviews and other critical evidence from the house defendants that cannot now be recovered or recreated. Proctor also secretly communicated with the Alberts on his personal phone, dun dun dun, the personal phone, deliberately back-channeling those communications to circumvent his state-issued device and used his sister as a conduit. For instance, on multiple occasions, Proctor disclosed critical and confidential information about the investigation to his sister, who passed that information to her close friend, Julie Albert, Brian Albert's sister-in-law. Julie Albert then passed that same information on to the rest of her family and the house defendants. Part of these communications included Julie Albert's promise to buy Proctor a thank you gift for handling this investigation in a manner that intentionally avoided implicating the house defendants and singularly focused on Miss Reed. By the way, we're up to 17 on our house defendants counter. I've been updating it as I'm reading. Proctor then went so far as to manufacture evidence to ensure that Miss Reed, not his friends and fellow law enforcement officers, was blamed for Mr. O'Keefe's death. This is brilliantly done, right? It's laying it out. This is very linear. Of course, it's like what I love about this is that it's not getting bogged down in all of the little details, because there's so many little details. They did a really great job of seeing what is the big picture here, what is the outline, what is literally the basic facts of the case, as stated by the plaintiff here, Karen Reed, that the reader has to know and has to understand in order to make sense of anything else to follow. So I just appreciate that it's like it's not getting bogged down in all these extra details. I mean, that are super important. Those will come later. This is just excellent. I mean, here we are on page 5, and already I feel like if you were the reader and you're not familiar with this case, you're already getting a good idea of what it is that they are alleging here, right? Proctor then went so far as to manufacture evidence to ensure that Miss Reed, not his friends and fellow law enforcement officers, was blamed for Mr. O'Keefe's death. This included planting evidence at the scene on Mr. O'Keefe's clothes and on Miss Reed's vehicle to support the false narrative that Miss Reed hit Mr. O'Keefe with her car, even though he knew Mr. O'Keefe's injuries were inconsistent with a motor vehicle strike and consistent with a physical altercation and dog attack. So it's like one step further. It's not just like that it was inconsistent. What they're alleging is that Proctor, right, didn't just know that the injuries were inconsistent with a motor vehicle strike. He also would have known that they were consistent with a physical altercation and dog attack. And, why does that matter? Well, a couple things. So, because what they're trying to allege here is not just like negligence, incompetence, right? But like overt actions, right? And that's why it matters too, right? That it's seeing that it's consistent with something else and willfully going with what it is inconsistent with. The other thing is, right, they can't get inside his head. Well, I guess depending on what all new text messages, right, and the ones that we already know of, but right here, right, where they're like, even though he knew, so what they're saying, right, is that Proctor knew that Mr. O'Keefe's injuries were inconsistent with a motor vehicle strike and consistent with a physical altercation dog attack. This is one of those things that, I'm trying to think. Y'all help me out. Did he ever testify in the first trial or make any statements previous to that? Did Proctor ever testify that the injuries were consistent with a dog attack? I remember his testimony as saying that, their initial thought was that it was a physical altercation, right? Like he was punched. So that part, yes. I think we might also have him sort of half on the record admitting that he thought it was inconsistent with a motor vehicle strike. The part that I don't remember him testifying to or making any statements of, again, him being Proctor, is that he thought the wounds or the injuries were consistent with a dog attack. So this one will remain to be seen how they're going to prove that up. Because even if they were to depose him and something like that came out, that wouldn't, they're putting this in this complaint as if they already have this knowledge somehow. So it'll be interesting to see how they back that up. And I'm not disputing that Proctor thought that. I just don't remember him saying that he thought it was consistent with a dog attack. So, far from conducting an objective investigation with integrity, there it is, like I was saying, right? Proctor personally sexualized and dehumanized Miss Reed throughout the investigation, specifically Proctor's private communications to his high school buddies, sister, and MSP colleagues that he believed would never be discovered, exposed the corruption and bias at the core of MSP's entire investigation. Specifically, now this is going to go, we're getting to the 1983 action here. Specifically, only hours into the investigation, in a text chain with 8 of his high school buddies, Proctor stated that Miss Reed is a, we all know what this is, whack job C word, retarded, nutbag, a babe with no ass, Proctor further ridiculed and derided Miss Reed for a serious medical condition, stating that her balloon knot leaked poo. In other private text messages to his MSP supervisors and colleagues, Proctor bragged that while conducting a search of Miss Reed's phone, he was looking for naked pictures of Miss Reed. Disappointed, he reported that there were no nudes so far. In an unfiltered utterance, Proctor revealed his true mindset. Hopefully she kills herself. That's a great example of literally what I was just saying. Remember when I made the joke, like joking with myself, like, oh, they can't get inside his head. And I was like, well, they kind of can, depending, when you've got this many text messages. This is a great example right here of how they laid this out, right? That this text message reveals his true mindset. So it's as good as you're going to get in terms of getting inside Proctor's head when you've got as many text messages as you have with him in this case. So there you go. Indeed, Proctor's supervisors and the MSP knew about and condoned Proctor's unlawful conduct, and in some instances expressly encouraged this flagrant abuse of power. For example, on one occasion, Proctor's immediate supervisor, Yuri Buchanan, responded with a thumbs up emoji to look at that thumb in the pleading. Oh my God. To a text calling Miss Reed retarded. Proctor's supervisors and the MSP. And remember how Buchanan said it was an acknowledgement. Proctor's supervisors and the MSP knew Proctor had a close relationship with the Alberts and that he made no secret of his bias against Miss Reed, demonstrating a clear prejudice against her from the outset. Relying on manufactured evidence, actively ignoring exculpatory evidence, and without investigating. This is great. This right here is really pulling this all together just so beautifully. It's like, look at all this. Like, dear reader, in case you were not paying close enough attention, let's just get to the summary of this. Relying on manufactured evidence, actively ignoring exculpatory evidence, and without investigating obvious signs pointing toward the House defendants, the Commonwealth secured 2 separate arrest warrants for Miss Reed and a knowingly baseless indictment against her, and then wrongfully prosecuted her for murder twice. I'm going to read that again because that is just, wow. I mean, that is it. That is literally, if you had to pick one sentence to summarize, actively ignoring exculpatory evidence and without investigating obvious signs pointing toward the House defendants, the Commonwealth secured 2 separate arrest warrants for Miss Reed and a knowingly baseless indictment against her, and then wrongfully prosecuted her for murder twice. As alleged below, these unlawful acts not only underlie plaintiff's meritless wrongful death claim against Miss Reed, but they also form the foundation for Miss Reed's claims against the defendants. These acts violated Miss Reed's state and federal constitutional rights, the Massachusetts Civil Rights Act, and well-established Massachusetts tort principles. On June 18, 2025, after a 2-month trial, a jury rejected the Commonwealth's theory, in part because the overwhelming physical, scientific, and medical evidence established that Miss Reed's vehicle did not strike Mr. O'Keefe, and that Mr. O'Keefe's injuries did not come from a vehicle strike. And that's going to be going back to the jurors that spoke out after the fact, because otherwise they couldn't make such a claim. Because even though it seems like, well, obviously the jurors thought that, you couldn't make that statement if they hadn't spoken out, right? Because it could have been for some other reason that none of us would have thought of, because we know jurors will do that. Although Miss Reed was ultimately and finally acquitted of all charges related to the death of Mr. O'Keefe, Proctor was fired, and nearly every MSP officer in Proctor's chain of command was disciplined for their egregious abuses and misdeeds. The Commonwealth still has not sought or provided justice to the O'Keefe family, not to the community at large, and certainly not to Miss Reed. In response, the Commonwealth has offered only empty platitudes instead of solutions. The head of MSP, oh boy, Colonel Jeffrey Noble stated, quote, "The events of the last 3 years have challenged our department to thoroughly review our actions and take concrete steps to deliver," God, this just makes me ill, "advanced investigative training, ensure appropriate oversight, and enhance accountability." I mean, it's just, under my direction as colonel, the state police has and will continue to improve in these regards. In an interview with the Boston Herald, Noble acknowledged the systemic nature of MSP's conduct in Miss Reed's case. Quote, "I'm eyes wide open to a culture issue that I have concerns with as it relates to Trooper Proctor," end quote. These hollow words do nothing to right the devastating wrongs that have been visited on Miss Reed. Colonel Noble's words confess a sickness deep in the marrow of MSP, but offer no remedy, no medicine, no relief to someone so brutally victimized by it. On Wednesday, March 19, 2025, following the public disclosure of Proctor's illegal and unethical conduct related to the Reed investigation, the MSP's trial board found Michael Proctor guilty of a Class A violation, which included, quote, "that he was biased in his dealings with the homicide suspect and or brought otherwise himself and the Massachusetts State Police into disrepute," end quote. It's an understatement. Miss Reed's life was not merely turned upside down by the MSP's and the House defendants' misconduct. It was forever changed by the defendants' transgressions and wrongdoing. The years of uncertainty and unimaginable emotional distress have left lasting scars that will never heal. So we're getting to the damages. At the same time, neither let me back up. There will actually be, right, in this pleading, there will actually be damages laid out. But we're getting to the facts of the case, right, as alleged by the plaintiff, Karen Reed. that will form the basis for the damages that will be later to come. Okay. The years of uncertainty and unimaginable emotional distress have left lasting scars that will never heal. At the same time, neither Mr. O'Keefe nor his family has received justice. And I love that they're focusing this. I was going to say this before, but I waited. But this is not the first time so far in this pleading that they've really referenced wanting justice for John O'Keefe. And I think that is so important. I think for a number of reasons, because as we know, it was like in both trials for Karen Read, it was the defense that, showed more compassion for John O'Keefe and actually spoke his name more than, the Commonwealth did and just actually seeking justice. But also in terms of just the, from a legal perspective, right? How to say this in terms of, not just saying, okay, she was wrongfully prosecuted and all this, but in terms of like, okay, in terms of their defense, okay, in terms of Karen Read's defense to the wrongful death claims that she's being sued for, part of that defense seems to be she didn't do it because somebody else did it, right? So again, you've got the two layers here. You've got what we kind of knew was coming all along, which is Karen Read suing for all the prosecutorial misconduct and the investigation in the 1983 and all that, right? That's the one thing. But then you also have her being sued for the wrongful death, and it's like a defense to that is like, well, somebody else did it, right? And of course, as we know, those two categories are so intertwined here. So by reiterating the justice for John O'Keefe and the tragedy of the O'Keefe family, not only is that showing compassion and and this is aligning with what they've been saying all along, right? And what Karen Read has expressed all along. But also it is laying the groundwork for, getting into seeking justice means, holding the people who really did it accountable, right? Which not only is going to be, again, a part of their lawsuit, but also will be a defense for the wrongful death lawsuit that Karen is facing. So hopefully that makes sense. In other words, it serves multiple purposes by reiterating the justice for John O'Keefe. Okay. At the same time, neither Mr. O'Keefe nor his family has received justice. His killer or killers still walk free. Yep. Keep reading, Chelsea. There it is. By asserting her claims against MSP Proctor and his supervisors, the town of Canton, and the House defendants, Miss Read seeks at minimum to confront and redress these wrongs and others. More importantly, she seeks to force the Commonwealth to fulfill its duty to stop law enforcement from trampling the innocent to protect their own. Well said. Okay, so now we're on to Roman numeral 2, parties, footnote 3. As stated above, MSP will be added as a new party by amendment once the applicable presentment period expires. Okay. Oh, and there's jurisdiction venue. Sweet. Okay. So parties. So I don't know that we really need to read this, but we'll just reiterate who the parties are. So we got the plaintiff, Karen Read. We got defendants, Michael Proctor, Buchanan, Tully, Brian Albert, Nicole Albert, Jennifer McCabe, Matt McCabe, and Brian Higgins. All right. Now for the fun part, jurisdiction and venue. This court has jurisdiction over all claims in this case pursuant to the general law, and with regard to the federal claims pursuant to this Massachusetts case. Venue, is appropriate in this court pursuant to Massachusetts General Law 223 because at least one party, there it is, to this case, plaintiff Karen Read, resides in Bristol County. There it is. Perfection. Okay. Roman numeral 4. Facts common to all counts. Cool. So they're going to go through the facts common to all counts. And I would imagine after this will be the facts specific to certain counts, but not to others. All right. Mr. O'Keefe's death. Before his death, Mr. O'Keefe and Miss Read were dating. On the evening of January 28th, 2022, Mr. O'Keefe and Miss Read went out for the night. They went to C.F. McCarthy's in Canton where they had several drinks. They then went to the Waterfall Bar in Canton. There, they met up with a group of acquaintances, including Brian Albert, his wife Nicole Albert, Brian's brother, Chris Albert, and his wife Julie, Jennifer McCabe, Nicole's sister and Brian's brother-in-law, her husband Matthew McCabe, and Brian Higgins. The group of acquaintances had several drinks and planned to continue the party back at the Albert's home in Canton, 34 Fairview, the house. House defendant Jennifer McCabe told John O'Keefe that he should come to the house. Remember that part from trial number 1 in Mrs. Kolakithis' testimony about how Jen McCabe pulled Karen aside and like basically tried to like separate her and John. Like that always gave me the heebie-jeebies every time. I mean, again, I can't wait to see what all comes out with this that they couldn't have gotten into in the criminal trial. It was like, what was it? The way that Mrs. Kolakithis said it was like Jen McCabe like grabbed Karen. Like Karen was like leaving with John. Then Jen McCabe like grabs Karen and is like, no, you're coming with me. And it was like, you could tell by the way she said it that she felt that she was like getting goosebumps, like in a not good way, even just retelling it. Like you could tell that she was like, I don't know what the right word is. Spooked isn't the right word. I can't think of the right word, but the way she tells that and just testified to that in the first trial, you could see how she felt at the time and how this didn't sit right with her. And when she testified, she was reliving that feeling. And when you watch it, it's just, yeah. Okay. Anyways. Okay. So, right. House defendant Jennifer McCabe told John O'Keefe that he should come to the house. The group had several overlapping social relationships. At that time, Brian Albert was a Boston police officer, as was Mr. O'Keefe, though they did not know each other well. Brian Albert and Brian Higgins were close friends. Higgins was an officer with the ATF. He was also permitted to keep an office at the Canton Police Department alongside Brian Albert's brother, Canton Police Detective Kevin Albert. Kevin Albert had a professional and social relationship with Michael Proctor, so just incest all over the place. Brian and Nicole Albert's son, Brian Albert Jr., and his friends were already at the house for Brian Jr.'s birthday. Yeah, that whole thing. In addition, Colin Albert, Brian Albert's nephew, was present. Miss Reed and Mr. O'Keefe had never been to the house before January 29th, 2022. They arrived in front of the Alberts' home around 12:20 a.m. Miss Reed was reluctant. Okay, now here's the first time where we're getting into like things that her version, it's a beautiful thing, right? Because after all this time, she didn't take the stand, obviously. This is her chance to actually lay out in a pleading here, right? Based on the facts that as they're being alleged by the plaintiff here, in her view and her defense team's view of what happened, like no holds barred, right? Lay it out. So this is just, to me, just so monumental, or momentous rather, such a momentous occasion here that we're finally getting this. Like what she was thinking beyond what we already knew. Miss Reed was reluctant to attend the party for several reasons, including that she was unsure whether they were at the correct location and whether they were even welcome to the late night party. Mr. O'Keefe got out of Miss Reed's SUV and indicated that he would check out the party and report back to her. See, some of these things might have been hinted at or assumed or made sense, just, again, kind of assumed or filling in the blanks, but like we're getting it actually spelled out in a new way. Fender, hey, so happy to see you. That is amazing. Missed you, my friend. Everybody, Fender is awesome, and she lives in India, and she is amazing, and she is also a psychologist. How's everything going with your practice? Okay, so here we go, guys. Mr. O'Keefe walked toward the front door / garage door area of the house and entered one of the two doors, not specifying which door, which is interesting. A period of time passed without any word from Mr. O'Keefe, not specifying how long of a period. And I'm not saying these as criticisms. I'm saying this as it's just noteworthy. Now, they don't have to get into those details. Like I said, that's not, but it could be on purpose, or I'm sure it's on purpose because it's like things that are not entirely known yet, or, are being disputed or what have you. Right. I think if I recall correctly, Karen has come out and said she didn't know which door he went into, if I recall. So that makes sense here. And then a period of time passed. That one I feel like could be easier to lock down based on the Cellbrite reports, but anyway, a period of time passed without any word. I mean, also it does kind of work better in a narrative, like for a narrative, to not just be so like, down to the numbers, right? A period of time passed sounds kind of like a, like the verbiage you would use in a fairy tale. Anyway, without any word from Mr. O'Keefe, Miss Reed, who was still hesitant to join, presumed that Mr. O'Keefe intended to stay, and therefore she left to go home without him. So she presumed that he intended to stay. Not that she presumed that he was cheating on her, right? At this juncture. I'm just pointing it out that she presumed that he intended to stay. Okay. At some point after entering the house/garage, Mr. O'Keefe was involved in a physical altercation, either, which I find this really interesting. Again, we're learning so much here, and this is really interesting to me because they are leaving it open for where this happened, either the house or the garage. Not the basement. Noteworthy, right? They're not saying the basement. I guess I'm going to keep reading. Obviously, I guess the basement could be in the house, but I feel like if they were going to say the basement, they would say the basement or the garage. So, physical altercation either inside the house or the garage. During that altercation, the Albert's German Shepherd attacked him, and Mr. O'Keefe sustained multiple dog bites and scratches on his right arm. And the other thing is, it makes sense too. Like, I'll speak for myself. It's very clear about the dog bites, right? And like the fact that, his injuries. But one thing I hadn't really thought about until now is that it also would make sense that, like, if you've got a German Shepherd, or not even just a German Shepherd, but if you've got a dog that's really protective, right? And then you see that somebody's getting into a fight with your mommy and daddy, as in mommy and daddy of the dog, right? Like your parents, that's a dog that has that instinct would attack, the other person. So whether or not they like commanded Chloe or cued Chloe, I mean, just thinking about it, I don't even think they would have had to. It could have been a thing where there was an altercation and Chloe got involved because German Shepherd and, former wannabe canine, no offense to Chloe, and she saw that somebody was, in an altercation with one of her people she didn't know the other person, right? So she attacked. Makes sense. So during that altercation, the Albert's German Shepherd attacked him, and Mr. O'Keefe sustained multiple dog bites and scratches on his right arm. He also suffered an incapacitating contre coup wound on the back of his head. This is another thing I found noteworthy, right? Because this never came up until the Commonwealth's expert, as y'all are well aware, in the second trial, Dr. Wolf. And he was so credible. And I love this because this is literally they're going to be using his testimony to support this claim. Because again, the contre coup was completely brand new, and I love it. It's almost like, in a way, it's almost like a shout out to Dr. Wolf, right? Because of his testimony, because Breenan brought him in, right? Now they're able to use this to support their complaint here. So, okay. Mr. O'Keefe's head wound was caused by falling backward and striking a ridged surface. The Albert's garage contains such surfaces. By contrast, the head wound could not have been caused by a vehicle strike or falling. I was wondering if they were going to bring this up, the frozen ground, or falling backward onto a flat, cold lawn. There it is, like the Alberts. Death by frozen grass. Where were the blood stains, basement or garage? In terms of more recently, it was the garage, and we don't have the full details on that, but I think that there was like rumor of blood stains in the basement, but like I don't feel like that was ever, of course not, right? Because it was never investigated. There were no pictures taken, and then by the time anybody went down there, the flooring was ripped up or whatever. So, but the difference is that in the garage, there were those pictures that came out around the time of her retrial of AJ, and I forget who else was over there with like a PI, and there were stains that looked like they could have been blood stains in the garage that they had pictures of, those pictures were circulating. I think that's probably what you're referencing, Fender. So this was filed by Alan and her truly insanely large team. Yes, correct. Just filed. Just happened. Former wannabe canine. Again, no shade to Chloe. We love Chloe. Chloe's a good girl. We love all the dogs, all the Ponards, but because she apparently, word on the street is that she failed out of the canine school. So she's got the instinct, but maybe not the training, to have maybe more discernment. Okay, because of their knowledge of criminal investigations, how much knowledge do they really have? Interesting. Albert's, McCabe's, and Higgins house defendants knew that calling for medical care to help save Mr. O'Keefe's life would trigger immediate and irreversible risk of their own criminal exposure. Therefore, at least 5 of them, big moment right there, at least 5 of them. This is a huge allegation because they could have chose any number. This is where they're actually getting to the conspiracy. At least 5 of them agreed on a simple plan to exonerate themselves and implicate Miss Reed. They would tell anyone who inquired Mr. O'Keefe never entered the house and hide evidence that he was there, including his body. Sometime during the night, they repositioned a forward edge. I love this. Again, I just get so excited because the forward edge, we never got the full, we never got that loop. I mean, did any of the loops really get closed? Really, no. But I mean, the forward edge of it all, it was like, come on now. Like, it just was one of those things that was like such a huge deal. And it just never got, there was just so little about it, right? And it's like, what the fuck? Why are we not like fleshing out what happened with the forward edge? Now's the opportunity, right? Because we're going to have all this discovery, all these depositions. Will we learn more about this forward edge? I certainly hope so. I'm really hoping. It's one of the things I'm really hoping for. So they repositioned a forward edge vehicle at a spot adjacent to the front lawn, which obscured the view of that area of the lawn from potential passersby. At some point further in the night, they carried or dragged Mr. O'Keefe's body to the same area in the yard, close to where one or more of them later claimed Miss Reed dropped off Mr. O'Keefe earlier that night. The plan was devised to make it appear that Mr. O'Keefe had been struck by Miss Reed's vehicle and then died as a result of exposure to the cold. This is just so well written, guys. This is just laid out so well. Mr. O'Keefe was either dead when the House defendants left him on the Alberts lawn or died shortly thereafter. After the physical altercation, Higgins left the house and drove to the Canton Police Department in the middle of the night. Oh my God, this whole thing. He later told investigators that he had to do some, quote, administrative work, but then changed his story subsequently, stating that he drove to the station because he had to move cars in the parking lot due to the snowstorm. And then he tried to fix all this by saying that moving the cars was administrative work, and I don't think anybody bought that story. However, video from inside the station, remember when this came out? Oh my God. Shows Higgins walking down the hallway and surreptitiously entering offices while wearing a hoodie to obscure his face. Surveillance video outside reveals Higgins transporting a large bag from one vehicle to another before driving away. After leaving the police station, Higgins and Brian Albert continued to coordinate their stories by calling each other multiple times in the early morning hours. Oh, when they were getting it on? 22 seconds time? Yep. The early morning hours, and ultimately spoke with each other on their cell phones at 2:22 a.m. And it's funny because there's like 22 seconds, and also this was at 2:22 a.m. Later, both Brian Albert and Higgins denied the existence of these phone calls, and then when confronted with their existence by a separate law enforcement agent, a non-MSP and non-C. So this is again the FBI. Oh my God. A non-MSP and non-CPD law enforcement agency at a separate proceeding. This is hilarious. I don't know if they actually have to do this. I'll be honest. I don't know. I don't know why they would have to do this unless they're just trying to use the same language that was used in the trial. But it's hilarious because if they don't have to do this, this is again just more shade at how silly this was in the second trial of trying to pretend like it wasn't the FBI, and putting it all in scare quotes is just amazing. I love it so much. They coordinated. It's like everyone knows what it is. They coordinated the same exact lie, falsely claiming the multiple calls and answers were just butt dials. However, 5 minutes after the Higgins-Alberts call, Miss McCabe performed a Google search on her phone at 2:27 a.m. Haas longed to die in cold, misspelling the first word. Also leaving out the word the. I added that part. Wow. All right, Miss Reed searches for Mr. O'Keefe. Miss Reed began the search for Mr. O'Keefe on January 29th, just before 5 a.m., when she awoke and realized he had not returned home. She phoned House defendant Jennifer McCabe, who already knew exactly what had happened to Mr. O'Keefe. This is the part I was literally just thinking in my mind. I'm like, oh my God, I really hope they lay out the fact that it was all Jen's idea. It was Jen's idea to Karen that they go to 34 Fairview. And it was Jen's idea to Carrie Roberts, like that it was all Jen's idea. And a lot of that actually came out in the second trial in terms of, if memory serves, I think it was the second trial. I feel like it was. In terms of Jen, yeah, it was. It was. There was some question that came out in the second trial that didn't get asked or something in the first trial, or was answered differently, that made it explicitly clear that it was all Jen's idea. So anyway, but here they go. They're all of the things that I keep as I'm reading it, and I'm like, oh, I hope they get into this. They literally go right into it. It's amazing. Miss McCabe insisted that Miss Reed drive to McCabe's house rather than driving to 34 Fairview Road, which Reed did. The two of them were joined by Carrie Roberts, and the three of them left the McCabe residence. However, rather than go to 34 Fairview, oddly, Miss McCabe directed them to go back to Mr. O'Keefe's home, where Miss Reed had just come from. After the three of them finally drove to 34 Fairview, let me read that differently. After the three of them finally drove to 34 Fairview, the illogical McCabe-directed route to 34 Fairview was intentional. It allowed the House defendants more time to finish creating the scene and hiding evidence before Mr. O'Keefe's body was discovered on the Alberts lawn and first responders arrived. As they approached the house with Miss Roberts driving, Miss Reed saw Mr. O'Keefe almost immediately. She screamed for Miss Roberts to stop the vehicle and jumped from the moving car to run to Mr. O'Keefe. She began rendering aid, including CPR. And one thing we pointed out during Jen's testimony in trial too was there's this whole discrepancy with from Jen's testimony about him being face down or face up. And we broke it down, and I'm sure it's all time stamped in terms of like when she's on the 911 call, she says something like to the 911 like dispatcher, like when they're talking about doing CPR, she's like, "Oh, I have to turn him over," or something like that, which doesn't, like, it's amazing. Like the discrepancies there are crazy because she's like literally saying like that they're like, she's literally stating like that he's on his back, but then it's like the next second she's like, "Oh, I have to turn him over to do CPR." In other words, like he's face down. It's pretty insane. Speaking of the CPR. So as the House defendants had planned, Mr. O'Keefe's body was, quote, discovered, end quote, in front of the Alberts house near a flagpole and fire hydrant on the left side of the Alberts property as seen from the roadside. The Ford Edge, dun dun dun, which had been parked in a position to obscure Mr. O'Keefe's body in the middle of the night, had been moved. Ford Edge. Can they bring the Ford Edge in as another defendant, please? Can we also sue the Ford Edge? Because the Ford Edge seems to be very much a character in this whole thing and has made it away scot-free, relatively speaking, so far. While Miss Roberts joined Miss Reed with administering CPR, Miss McCabe did not help or even approach Mr. O'Keefe. Rather, she sat in the cab of the vehicle, called 911, and reported that, quote, "there's a man passed out in the snow." Despite knowing that her brother-in-law, Brian Albert, a police officer and first responder, was just feet away inside the house, Miss McCabe never went into the house or requested that Albert come down to help Mr. O'Keefe. Rather, as Mr. O'Keefe lay dying in the snow, Miss McCabe stood and watched with no fear, urgency, or even concern for her family members residing mere feet away. And that was so brilliantly laid out in trial 2. All right, investigation begins. The CPD were first on the scene shortly after 6 a.m. At the time, there was no evidence that Mr. O'Keefe had been hit by a vehicle. In fact, the evidence suggested just the opposite. His body did not show signs of trauma commonly associated with being struck by a car. There were no bone fractures or trauma to his lower body, his torso, or any other part of his body, as investigators would expect from a vehicle strike. Rather, Mr. O'Keefe's injuries were consistent with being physically assaulted to the face and head and attacked by a dog. For good reason, the ranking CPD officer on the scene, Sergeant Michael Lank, opined on a telephone call captured on a dash cam that Mr. O'Keefe looked like he had been in a fight. Again, this is like what I was referencing earlier, where it's like, yeah, I remember there was testimony that like the initial thoughts of law enforcement like was like, oh, he's been in a fight. But the thing that I don't remember them testifying to or saying in a text or phone call or anything like that was that they also initially thought he'd been attacked by a dog. And I also don't know if they would have even seen that on his arm at that point anyway, right? But okay. Moreover, the initial search conducted by Canton police officers revealed that there was no vehicle debris on the lawn at 34 Fairview, let alone any debris at or near Mr. O'Keefe's body. This is one of my favorite parts of Shade coming up right here, guys. Not a single piece of taillight material was discovered on the lawn that morning or in the roadway. Here it comes. Notwithstanding multiple searches and the use of a leaf blower to remove snow. The shade is on point. I'm going to read it again here. Not a single piece of taillight material was discovered on the lawn that morning or in the roadway, notwithstanding multiple searches and the use of a leaf blower to remove snow. This just goes right back to, what was it? This was named Gallagher's testimony in the first trial and second trial. You know, how did the leaf blower work? And it worked perfectly. it was, it was the ultimate best tool to be using. So it's like, okay, well, I just love it. It's amazing. The shade. Tellingly, despite the commotion outside, including more than a dozen first responders, 3 police cruisers, 2 ambulances, a ladder fire engine, all with their emergency lights flashing, and at least 2 civilian vehicles, plus Miss Reed's screams upon finding Mr. O'Keefe's body, no one from the Alberts house, including police officer Brian Albert, ever went outside to see what was happening, let alone help. They wanted to avoid scrutiny from the police investigators. I want to point something else out here too. So even though, again, we've watched these trials, the way that this is written, it's really funny because this, to me, as I was just reading this, I got a visual of what was happening outside the house, like as if like brand new, like I was reading it and I wasn't even associating it with what came out in the trials. It's like I just got a fresh visual of this, and when that happened, as I was reading it, literally and I don't know that I thought of this until now, but it dawned on me how, like, those of you guys who live places with snow, like, it's one thing when you've got all these emergency lights flashing, right? Because it'll wake most people up, even if there's no sound, right? Just the lights flashing. But one thing that I just got this visual of, and I'm just putting it all together too, if you've got snow on the ground, I wish they had, if you've got snow, all of those emergency lights, it's completely like, it's times a million, right? Like, in other words, all of that light, the blue, the red, all the lights, it's like you may as well double them, because all of those lights are going to just bounce off the snow and be just like reflected back. So, and also it's going to make everything so much brighter. So if you imagine, however many emergency vehicles with their lights on, no snow, right? And then, when it's dark, and then same thing, but now you've got snow on the ground and it's, still dark. It's completely different in terms of just how much more implausible it would be to not see them, wake up to them, or what have you, when you've got the snow on the ground, because everything's so amplified. It's kind of like, if for people who don't live with places with snow, it's like if you imagine like the red and blue lights, and and the red and blue lights are being pointed at a brick wall in the dark. Okay. You're going to see them from where they're coming from, but you're not going to even probably see what happens to them once they get to the brick wall. But imagine, in contrast, it's dark and you've got red and blue lights flashing, and instead you've got like, I don't know, a piece of like aluminum foil instead of a brick wall, as an example. Well, can you see that's kind of how I'm thinking of it, right? How just so super reflective that it just completely changes it, right? Instead of just absorbing the lights, it amplifies them and reflects them. Okay. So tellingly, despite the commotion outside, including more than a dozen first responders, 3 police cruisers, 2 ambulances, a ladder fire engine, all with their emergency lights flashing, and at least 2 civilian vehicles, plus Miss Reed's screams upon finding Mr. O'Keefe's body, no one from the Alberts house, including police officer Brian Albert, ever went outside to see what was happening, let alone help. They wanted to avoid scrutiny from the police investigators. Sergeant Link was a longtime friend of the Alberts and the first law enforcement officer to enter the house. He spoke to the Alberts and the McCabes. Pursuant to their plan, the Alberts and the McCabes told Sergeant Link that Mr. O'Keefe had never entered the Alberts house the night before. The Alberts and McCabe's statements were false. Mr. O'Keefe arrived at and entered the house or garage where he was assaulted, attacked by the Alberts dog, and suffered a fatal injury to the back of his head. Despite Mr. O'Keefe's injuries being wholly inconsistent with the story the House defendants were now telling him, neither Sergeant Link nor any other member of the CPD searched the house to determine whether the occupants or anyone else were involved in Mr. O'Keefe's death, which is just, again, never fails to be insane, even when you already know this is the case. It's just unreal. Like, I mean, nor did they request to search the occupants' cell phones, observe their bodies for evidence of a fire, even secure the scene where Mr. O'Keefe's body was found. It's just, they failed to do so because of bias born of friendship and loyalty in favor of the Alberts and the McCabes. After Sergeant Link returned to the CPD 3 hours after discovery of Mr. O'Keefe's body and more than 2 hours after being interviewed at the Alberts home that morning, Miss McCabe called Sergeant Link to report that she, quote, recalled, end quote, additional information. As part of the plan to implicate Miss Reed and remove suspicion from the House defendants, she falsely told Sergeant Link that Miss Reed told her twice that morning, "I hope I didn't hit him." I love it. We're getting into this. We're getting into it, guys. I hope I didn't hit him. More than a year later, at a separate proceeding, Miss McCabe changed her story on this topic yet again. In furtherance of the House defendants' plan, McCabe then falsely reported that Miss Reed outright confessed to hitting Mr. O'Keefe right after she first found him in the snow. And of course, I'm sure they'll do this. I'm sure because they're laying, every time I make a thing where I'm like, oh, I hope they do this, they do it. But it's like, this is like the first evolution. It's like, but it gets worse, right? Because then it evolves, and it evolved even further, as y'all saw in the second trial with these statements, to where then they even had Nuttall coming in. And anyway, it's just, like I said, I'm sure they will get there. Okay. It's like the anecdote or whatever you want to call it of the big fish tales, like every time they tell the big fish story, it's like, oh, I caught this fish. And it's like every time they tell the story, the fish is like bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's like that, but like on another level in terms of the evolution of the Karen Reed statements, allegedly from, the McAlberts and law enforcement. From no statement to I hope I didn't hit him, and then you guys know where it goes from there. Okay. Proctor leads MSP investigation despite conflicts. Michael Proctor was assigned as the case officer and had primary responsibility for the MSP investigation of Mr. O'Keefe's death. Sergeant Yuri Buchanan was Proctor's direct supervisor. Lieutenant Brian Tully was the supervisory officer at the Norfolk County State Police Detective Unit, and thus supervised both Buchanan and Proctor in their roles. Buchanan and Tully both knew at all times exactly the extent of Proctor's misconduct in investigating Mr. O'Keefe's death as described below. From the beginning, Proctor should never have been assigned as investigating officer, let alone lead investigator. He grew up and resides in Canton, is a good friend of the Alberts, and had known the family for years. Proctor and Julie Albert, Brian Albert's sister-in-law, each had each other's personal cell phone numbers. In fact, just days before Mr. O'Keefe's death, Proctor communicated with Julie Albert about babysitting Proctor's minor child. Proctor's sister Courtney was also a close friend of Julie. In fact, Proctor's own mother referred to the Alberts as the Proctor's second family. Yikes. The existence of these relationships was intentionally suppressed by Proctor and other members of the MSP, including Buchanan and Tully, in an effort to ensure that the House defendants were protected and that Miss Reed's right to a fair investigation and trial were undermined. We're getting to the 1983 stuff here. I mean, we've already been getting to it, but we're getting more into it because, in terms of all the different causes of action, which the causes of action will be laid out later on in this complaint. But in terms of the different causes of action, while all of them have, underpinnings of what could be part of a 1983 action, we're getting to the more 1983-ish part of it, to me, I think here. Because, her right to a fair trial and right to a fair investigation trial were undermined. Yeah. Proctor, Buchanan, and Tully engage in a corrupt and biased investigation by not investigating inside the house and interviewing House defendants as friends rather than suspects. Friends, try co-conspirators. Proctor, Buchanan, Tully, and the MSP never searched for DNA evidence inside the house, never looked for ridged surfaces that could have caused the gash on Mr. O'Keefe's head, on the back of Mr. O'Keefe's head, rather, never inspected the House defendants' bodies for indication of bruises or cuts that resulted from an altercation, and did not search the House defendants' cell phones. This allowed potential evidence to be destroyed, disposed of, removed, or simply become unrecoverable. Proctor's, Buchanan's, and Tully's interviews of the House defendants were also outside of normal protocol. They were all interviewed either at their home, their family member's home, their lawyer's home in the case of Brian Higgins, their lawyer's office in the case of Brian Jr. and Caitlin Albert, their place of employment, or over the phone. These interviews were untimely, unrecorded, and fundamentally designed to protect the House defendants. And the House defendants took full advantage of it. Specifically, Jennifer McCabe became the point person for the House defendants in providing their false narrative to investigators. So they're definitely, in terms of the whole McAlbert conspiracy, you can see that they're definitely placing a lot of this, on her, right? In terms of culpability, which, way on down the road at trial, when it comes to the damages, could become important if a jury determines that certain members of the McAlberts are more culpable than others in terms of their role in the conspiracy. and they're definitely laying it hard, as they should, on Jen McCabe here. So she managed and communicated details about the House defendants' messaging and the investigation itself, including visiting Proctor's and other investigators' private residences, mapping out timelines to coordinate statements with other witnesses, leading group text message chains that were later partially deleted, and planning private meetings at all hours of the day and night. Indeed, these were never the acts of innocent witnesses seeking to help an investigation concerning the death of an alleged friend, sick burn. Rather, they were the predicate acts of a conspiracy among a group of people with a shared goal of deflecting their criminal exposure onto someone else. I mean, I'm sure it's no surprise to anyone, but like, this is so well written. Again, I don't think it was an accident that that statement to the media came out the day before by an unnamed lawyer for the McAlberts and Higgins, with no actual filing, just a statement that they were going to be suing Karen Reed for defamation. And they actually, in that statement, referenced, the conspiracy, anyway, it's just, yeah. Clearly clearly that shows that they are really concerned about what's going to come out about this conspiracy, and they're trying to thwart it. Okay, the remaining group texts that were not deleted or that were recovered later reveal some of their planning. For instance, on the evening of January 29th, Jennifer McCabe texted with her sister, Nicole Albert, that Carrie Roberts, who was present when Mr. O'Keefe's body was found, quote, talked to cops and kept it simple. Of course, there'd be no reason to report back to the other House defendants about Roberts keeping it simple, unless what really happened was more complicated. Great point. Proctor, Buchanan, and the MSP never sought these communications. Rather, they were obtained by Karen Reed's defense attorney's repeated motions to compel access to data on Miss McCabe's phone. Later, in group texts with Jennifer McCabe and Brian and Nicole Albert, Matthew McCabe suggested having Chris Albert publicize their crafted story to a reporter, saying, ask Chris to ask some questions, tell them the guy never went in the house. And that's the clip we watched at the beginning of the live stream. As endorsement of the plan, Brian Albert responded, exactly. The exactly, honestly, just thinking about this is noteworthy, right? It wasn't an okay. It wasn't even a Yuri Buchanan style thumbs up for acknowledgement. Let me read this again, because this response, okay. Ask Chris to ask them some questions. Tell them the guy never went in the house. And then Brian Albert responds, exactly. Way different than a yes or an okay or a uh-huh or a thumbs up. It's like in a movie when the villains are plotting. And it's like, exactly. And they're like rubbing their hands together the way villains do. Man. Heather's here. Oh my God, Heather, my twin flame. It's been so long. I've missed you. Where have you been? I'm so glad you're alive. Oh my God. It's been forever. It's so crazy because, I haven't been covering anything happening out of Idaho. So a lot of the Idaho peeps, we haven't seen each other. As always, I will note again, I'm still following and completely privy to everything that's been coming out and then been released and all that. Like I just haven't covered it because there's so much, and that is literally, I would have to clone myself about 10 times over because I already have 2 jobs. So as I always say, but for anyone who's missed it, including but not limited to Heather, if there's anything specifically that you guys want us to do a live stream and talk about, could be body cam, could be interviews, could be certain, ISP reports, could be whatever. There's been so much. I already have a live stream set up. Speaking of which, I already have a live stream set up to cover the hearing from what was that, last week? I already have a live stream set up to cover that. Because I actually thought there were some interesting things to talk about. But anyway, as always, open to requests. So anything, just because there's so much, if there's anything you guys specifically want to talk about and go through, just let me know and we will do it. Heather says she could make, I know you could. I know you could. I know you could. You thought maybe work was busy. My work is extremely busy. Oftentimes I leave at 7:30 in the morning to go to work and don't get back until 9 or 9:30 p.m. That's at the law firm, right? And then I'm still teaching lessons on a couple evenings a week, and also then on the weekends lessons. So like it's insane. That's why I've barely had time to, I'm fitting live streams in where I can, basically. Like for example, tonight I didn't have lessons. So that's why I'm able to live stream after work. Work's been amazing though. I've got so many stories. We'll save those for another live stream. I've got a whole compilation, guys, of stuff that you guys will love about things that have been going on that will give you guys, I think, some hope for the justice system, like just in some really good stuff that happened. How long is this complaint? Haas long. It is 46 pages, and we are on about to be on page 17 of 46. We're not going to do it all in this live stream. This is going to have to be split up into 2 or 3 probably. Also because, as you guys might be able to tell, I'm starting to lose my voice because I talk all day at work. But we're about to be on page 16 or 17, sorry, of 46. Okay, importantly, the text messages from the House defendants' phones, House defendants, that were ultimately recovered and that provide a window into their conspiracy and misconduct, as well as MSP's unlawful investigation, were not the product of CPD or MSP's investigative work. Rather, based on media reports raising serious questions about MSP's investigation and the House defendants' role in Mr. O'Keefe's death, another separate law enforcement agency, in scare quotes. And this is shade. I'm convinced. The first time it happened, I was like, is this like because this is more functional? No. Second time, it's not an accident. Now I'm convinced this is on purpose. This is shade to make fun of how this had to be dealt with in the second trial. This is hilarious. The snark and the shade. I live for this. I live for this. Yes. Other key moments so far in this pleading were the part about Proctor keeping his promise, and the promise being essentially to do an extra shitty job at his job. And then the other one of the part about notwithstanding using a snowblower to look for the taillight. Anyway, just great. Okay. So the quote, separate law enforcement agency, end quote, began its own subsequent investigation. That investigation, and not MSP's, resulted in obtaining the House defendants' phones, taking statements from the House defendants, and conducting a separate proceeding, all of which MSP refused to do itself. Oh, of course. Yeah. And let's just also make sure we are pointing out the best one of all in terms of the shade is the one that has now been repeated so far 43 times in this complaint, and that is the House defendants. Amazing. Indeed, the evidence procured by the separate law enforcement agency's investigation demonstrates the House defendants' conspiracy and unlawful conduct, as well as MSP's bias and corruption. Also, Heather, as far as it goes with Idaho stuff, if you do want to try to make a list, maybe think about, like, you know me, what are the, because again, there's just so much. What are the things that you think that I could, where I could be useful, if you will, like whether it's, I don't know, like, because no one's really covering all this stuff anymore. Again, it's not really possible because there's so much, but like, I have sort of my own thoughts, but it doesn't matter. I want to know what you guys think. Like, again, like that recent hearing seems like a no-brainer, right? Going through that, because I think that's interesting. And there's a lot of interesting angles to that, and also legal discussion. But yeah, you guys know what I potentially could go through, and what you guys, so just sort of see where, in terms of like where, what are the words I'm looking for? Just because there's so much of the stuff, like what would be a priority in terms of things that it's like, somebody make it make sense, right? Not that I can, because you can't, of certain things, like there's some things that will never make sense, but we can at least try. Okay. All right. So, Proctor and Buchanan initially interviewed the McCabes and Brian Albert on January 29th at the McCabe's home at 12 Country Lane in Canton, at which time they again falsely stated that Mr. O'Keefe never entered the Alberts home. Buchanan and Proctor did not interview Nicole Albert and Brian Higgins until February 3rd, 2022, and did not interview Chris and Julie Albert until February 10th, nearly 2 weeks after Mr. O'Keefe's death and more than a week after Miss Reed was arrested and charged. Before both interviews, the McCabes and Alberts continued to coordinate their stories as evidenced in the group texts. Proctor, Buchanan, and Tully likewise failed to conduct a meaningful investigation into Higgins' involvement. When Proctor and Buchanan interviewed Higgins on February 3rd, Higgins presented the troopers with a select set of self-curated texts, oh boy, between himself and Miss Reed. Hold on. Texts between Higgins and Karen Reed, you say?
I am not a hoe. You tell me, playa. Balls. I need a drink.
Wasn't it great though? Buchanan reading the texts. Okay. We have a lot of those because they are amazing. Right. So when Proctor and Buchanan interviewed Higgins on February 3rd, Higgins presented the troopers with a select set of self-curated texts between himself and Miss Reed. They learned that Higgins and Miss Reed had been exchanging flirtatious texts and that Higgins reported at least one instance. Wait, hold on. Let me do this better. Let me read that again. They learned that Higgins and Miss Reed had been exchanging flirtatious texts.
I am not a hoe.
Between himself and Miss Reed. They learned. Okay. Flirtatious texts, and that Higgins reported at least one instance in which Miss Reed and Higgins had kissed while at Mr. O'Keefe's house mere weeks before his death. Oh my God. Rather than pursuing Higgins as a possible suspect, Proctor, Buchanan, and Tully neglected to investigate the matter further. They never interviewed Higgins again, even after surveillance video revealed Higgins was suspiciously hiding his face in the halls and parking in the parking lot of CPD at 1:30 a.m. on January 29th. The video contradicts Higgins' statements about his actions that night. However, not only did Proctor, Buchanan, Tully, and MSP not investigate what Higgins was doing or what was in the bag, what you got in that bag. Y'all know. I could easily bust into rollout right now, but I'm not going to. A couple of gats, a couple of rats, a couple of wives, Okay. What was in the bag, but they went so far as to hide this video from Karen Reed and her criminal defense attorneys for years. Reed's defense did not receive these videos until after Reed stood trial for the first time. And even in the separate law enforcement agency's investigation revealed, after the investigation revealed late night phone calls between Brian Albert and Brian Higgins, MSP failed to pursue either witness further or seek a full forensic extraction of Higgins's phone or even a simple call log from his cellular provider. When it was revealed, you guys know where this is going, that Mr. Reed's defense team requested the preservation of Brian Albert's and Higgins's phones in order to forensically image them. This request was allowed by the court. Both men got rid of their phones within days of one another. Higgins went so far as to drive to a military base on Cape Cod, remove the SIM card from the phone, cut the SIM card with the scissors he brought with him, and destroy and dispose of the phone and card separately in 2 dumpsters and then drive back home. Again, another great example. This is a fact that we all know. We're all well aware. But the way that this is brilliant writing. The way that they laid this out step by step makes it sound even worse. Like this sounds even worse to me than I already knew all this, but it's the writing. Like, I'm going to read it again because it's like, this makes it even worse. Higgins went so far as to drive to a military base on Cape Cod, remove the SIM card from the phone, cut the SIM card with scissors he brought with him, and destroy and dispose of the phone and card separately in 2 dumpsters and then drive back home. Wow. Their destruction of their phones eliminated potentially incriminating communications between them and was a direct result of Proctor's, Buchanan's, and Tully's intentional refusal to collect important investigative evidence that would be exculpatory to Miss Reed. Even after learning about the destruction of both witnesses' cell phones, MSP investigators had other avenues they could have used to pursue evidence, such as cellular toll records or simply interviewing Brian Higgins and Brian Albert to inquire about the nature of their late night communications. Their late night communications, you say? We got a sound for that. They intentionally ignored these avenues as well. Yeah, and by doing so, they missed out on what could have been a brilliant, or not brilliant, I don't know, fill in the blank. We use whatever word you see fit. A fill in the blank, romantic affair between the two Bryans, right? The Bryans both be wrestling when they have too much to drink, as the song goes. We all missed out on that. Okay, let's see what Heather is saying in the chat here. Things that Chelsea can explain. Yes, thank you. That's exactly it. Thank you for articulating that for me. Yes, things I can explain or try to explain. What about Twiz? Are you going to consult with Twiz? And we have a new scroll friend, Psychodynamic. Welcome if you're new. Welcome to the Scroll Crew. Happy to have you here. Psychodynamic. Also, we have all these fun commands. We love Nightbot. Welcome on in. Okay, so have you been on Replay Crew? Feel free to let me know. And also, if you feel free to let us know where you're joining us from, if you feel so inclined. Happy to have you here. Twizzle Quest, he's in the group chat. I wish I could be in the group chat, but like, I just don't, I don't have you guys. Yeah, me trying to coordinate with the time that I have or the lack thereof. Yeah. Oh, new as in you've been watching Freaks. Oh, cool. Awesome. So even if that's the case, it's been longer than that since the last time we've done a live stream on Karen Reed. So yeah, so I'm excited that this came out. I mean, like I said, this is huge. This complaint is huge. And, it's just so momentous, man. Oh, you're from Sweden. Oh, that's awesome. Love it. Scrolls of the World, unite. And actually, we have a fun little thing for that too, for the Scrolls of the World. Where is that one? Here it is. Cuckoo! Calling all squirrels. That's the squirrel call for anyone who's not familiar. That's the official squirrel call. All right. So here's another thing. I don't know if they did this on purpose, but it wouldn't surprise me because the snark has been so on point. Let's refresh our memory what they were just saying. Okay. They're talking about Brian Higgins and Brian Albert and their late night communications. Okay. So let me read this part again. Even after learning about the destruction of both witnesses' cell phones, MSP investigators had other avenues they could have used to pursue evidence, such as cellular toll records or simply investigating Brian Higgins and Brian Albert to inquire about the nature of the late night communications. Cue the bomb chicka bomb bomb clip. Okay. They intentionally ignored these avenues as well. Not only did Proctor fail to probe, and I mean, I'm just like wondering, like, did they mean, is that the timing of that word? Is that, anyway. All right. Not only did Proctor fail to probe his friend's stories, he coordinated with them through his sister. Proctor spoke to Courtney multiple times a day and knew she was in close contact with and providing information to Julie Albert. Julie and Courtney called each other many times between February 1st and 2nd, and at least 67 times between February 1st and September 6th, 2022. I don't know. If I think about between February 1st and September 6th, I don't know. Is 67 times a lot to you guys? February 1st and September 6th. February, March, April, May, June, July, August. Wait, hold on. Let me check. February, March, April, May, June, July, August. That's 8 months. So that's like less than 10 calls a month. That's not that much. If it's less than 10 calls a month, that's like less than 2 calls a week. That's not, I mean, I would say that's not, 67 sounds like a large number until you get to the September 6th part, right? I thought it was going to say like February 1st and like February 6th, but I was like, oh, September. Yeah, I don't know. Not that it's neither here nor there. It's one of the least important, facts in terms of supporting his allegations, right? So here's the thing. Discord has stopped sending. I'm assuming you guys are using Discord. Discord has stopped like sending me notifications because it's been so long since I've even been able to like use Discord. Like I've been on there like twice in the past, I don't know, since I started my new job, for specific things. Cause there was like one thing that Flash sent me and then another thing that I was messaging Meg about. Other than that, it's like, the only way I would have like time would be to do it while I'm driving, and that's not safe. But I would still love to be in the group chat. Like, even if, and like, you wouldn't have to worry about notifications, like, bothering me because I wouldn't get them. But like that way, at least I could be included if I ever got sick, say, like if I ever got sick and then I like can't go to work, like then I don't even know what I would do with myself because I'm just working like just so much, all of the work. And I love my work, so it doesn't feel like work, but it's called work because you go and you get paid. But anyways, but like I'd still like to be included, anyway. So, and for anyone who hasn't heard, like as of what was it, at the end of May, I started working as the paralegal / legal assistant for the only one for two really, really, really well-known and extremely awesome defense attorneys in this area who are absolutely, I couldn't, if I won't get started on it because we'll be here for hours. I would have, it's hard. Yeah. I can't say, they are, I don't know how I got so lucky. I've got so many great stories that we'll have to get caught up on maybe on the next live stream, like I was referencing, because I'm just, somehow I ended up with like, if you guys know what I appreciate, right, and what a lot of us appreciate in terms of attorneys in general, but with defense attorneys, like somehow like take all of the traits of like the defense attorneys that we think are amazing and that we watch these trials and who are like role models for those of us who are interested in the law and whatever. It's like all of those things, like I somehow, even here in North Carolina, like I somehow wound up with two defense attorneys who are literally all of those things and more. Honestly, when you guys hear these stories that happened at the end of October, you'll understand what I'm saying, because one of the attorneys that I work for pulled off and defeated the odds, the likes of which we don't even see like on LawTube, like even with like high profile defense attorneys. Like it's amazing. I get emotional just thinking about it. So anywho's, tell Twiz to make a new group with the four of us. That would be awesome. That'd be amazing. Thank you. Woo! What new job? Fender, you didn't know? I wish I wasn't losing my voice so I could better elaborate for Fender, but I'm losing my voice so hardcore. But I don't remember what live stream it was. I announced it on the live stream when I announced this. It's time stamped, but I don't remember which live stream it was. Anyways, do I have paralegal training? Yeah, you knew this. I got my paralegal certificate a long time ago. I mean, not a long time ago, but like a number of months ago. But then I was offered this. I mean, it's amazing. It's like everything that I want to be doing. Like literally the things that I've been doing for fun, I'm now doing and actually making a huge difference for people's life, like in people's lives, like on a daily basis, like every single day. Anyways, again, I wasn't losing my voice, because it's hard to fully even articulate just like all of the things, but, well, we'll have to talk about it on the next live stream because I want to show you guys something that you'll really appreciate. Filing all of the things, learning all the NC specific laws and statutes. I've been to trial now, trial prep. like all of the things you guys like in the interim when I am not able to have live streams because I've not been able to stream as often, like the number of things that happen that are like so relevant that I know y'all would want to hear about in between those live streams. There's so many things. That's why I keep a list. And I just haven't had time to get caught up and cover everything on the list. But anyway, we'll have to just do a live stream and get caught up on it because you guys are going to love the stories. Honestly, it's just great. And Twiz, welcome Twiz. Twiz is here. Oh my God, the Wildcat. Oh my God. Oh my God. Hang on. Wildcat, you say? I love this. We love this. Where is it? Oh my God, it's already funny and it's not playing yet.
You also told them that you thought you heard a wildcat, but maybe it was a person or something like that as well?
No, that's not what I said.
What did you say then?
I said when I went outside that there's a house cat that's gone wild, and he hangs around. He goes from hanging around the shop, goes from hanging around the house, different times. You might, and there'll be times you don't see him. And he had been around the house. Mm-hmm. And when I went outside, I believe that cat was over there.
Amazing. So my students, like I was saying earlier, I leave for work at like 7 or 7:30 in the morning. I get home usually around 9 or 9:30 at night. And then like usually three to 4 nights a week, or depending on my students, after I get home and take care of Frodo, I teach lessons, and then I teach lessons on the weekend. So I consolidated my teaching schedule, and I'm not taking anybody new. And so I'm still doing all the teaching. But I'm also working more than full-time hours because I love what I do. So I go early and I stay late. So dude, Murdoch, don't even get me started. Have you, Psychodynamic, have you seen the playlist that I have? Because that's like my specialty trial. That's my favorite trial. If you haven't watched that, you'll definitely want to check that out. We deep dove the fuck out of that case and that trial. I think probably more so than anybody. And it's one of my not just for me, we as in the Squirrel Crew, like as a whole, as a community, like I'm so proud of the work that we did on that case and on that trial. And so great question though. How did the baby rabbit versus the T-Rex? One of the things I'm trying to tell you guys, I'm so glad you asked. Okay. So the baby rabbit, as I think y'all, if you are familiar with this, he has been in the hospital, right? After for months and months and months, like was brought forth these charges while he's like on death's door, clinging to life, right? He's been in the hospital for all these months. So the case has just been getting continued and pending. Like it's just doing that thing that happens in this court system here where it's just nothing's happening, right? Which would have been the case even if he wasn't in the hospital. Guess what happened the other day? And guess how surprised I was when the phone rang, which I mean, soul's ringing, phone rang, and guess who was on the other line? The baby rabbit. And I'm not gonna say his name, obviously, but like, he was like, hey, it's da-da-da, and said his name. And I almost like fell over. I was like, oh my God, like there he was in the flesh, like asking for, when's the next court date and this and that and the other thing. And, like, I was like, oh my God, I literally thought to myself, oh my God, it's the baby rabbit. Like I'm talking to him right now. Like he's alive and he's out of the hospital. He's not in custody. That's also amazing. Cause I really honestly didn't know what was going to happen, but he's out of the hospital. He's not in custody. And, he's facing these pending nonsensical, if you ask me, attempted murder charges. And he called me on the phone. He used to call me on the cell phone. Insanity. Oh, you've watched all of it? Awesome. You're not sure you actually did. Interesting. I really want to hear your hot takes. We will be doing a Murdoch stream here soon because there's been some movement in that case too. I just need to clone myself. I always think about what if I could like live stream while doing my job at work. Like it's not a real thing. Like I at work, like at the law firm, I do the job of like multiple people, as is, like with like all of my full scroll energy and scroll enthusiasm and scroll attention. And you guys know what that's like. And it's like, I'm like literally like in my brain, like it's like a chess match with myself, trying to figure out how I can do all of the things and not miss anything because everything is so important. And it's like the job that normally a lot of people, like several people would have. But yet I'm still like, oh my gosh, I wish it's like if something happens, like for example, today when this complaint, I was like, man, I wish I could be like live streaming while doing all this. Anyway, it's just, right. At least he's not in jail for sure. Yeah, no. And that's, again, speaks to the amazingness of the attorneys that I work for, right? Because I don't know how he's not in jail. I don't know how he's not in custody when he's got attempted murder. And that's not the only charge. It's like they did that and then like the other lesser included. The fact that he's not in jail and he's out on bond right there, like speaks to the type of attorneys, like the attorneys that I work for are the type that work literal miracles and magic. They are legal ninjas. I feel like that's an understatement. There aren't even words I could say that would not feel like an understatement to me. So I'm just going to stop trying. Hospital better. I thought, weren't the jails in Sweden supposed to be like nice? Or is that, maybe it's all relative. And maybe I think probably the hospitals are also nicer than what we have here. I don't know. Let us know in Sweden. What do you think of the hospitals and the jails? Baby, I know it's just, I've seen, and so much crazy shit has happened at work, guys. Again, it's just like, oh my God, every single day is like, it's like so many things, like all of the things, all of the tea, all of the things, all of the crazy stories, all of the amazing legal moments and crazy legal moments, things that will piss you off in terms of the charges and things that will, then just the stories that it's just pick a day, any day. Every single day is like, you could make a movie out of it or something, like it's like just, it's like constant chaos because you're dealing with like the court system. Like that's one thing, it's constant chaos, but it's also constant, like just interesting, just all of the things. But anywho, oh, they're real nice compared to the US. Yeah, that's what I figured. So, okay, guys, I've got my voice is really going though, and I gotta leave for work in like 4 hours and see if I can rest my voice before then. So we will pick up here. I think it'll be tomorrow. I'm pretty sure because my students said that they had to move because they had sports ball stuff. So I should be able to pick up tomorrow with part 2 of this. And we are on number 62. I'm going to write it down. And I promise we will also go through some of my list. You guys will love it. You guys will love the stories that I have. Stories isn't really the right word, but like just, I don't even have the words for it, to be honest. Things that will like some of the things that happened at the end of October are days I will never forget for the rest of my life. And I saved certain things because I'm like, I'll never, like this day is like a day in history that will like top 10 days, like in my life. It's crazy. So, but yes, so 62, there we are. And, yeah, we'll pick up with this tomorrow, guys. I'll be looking forward to being invited into the group chat if you guys think I'm cool enough with the Idaho discussion. I'm sorry I'm losing my voice. You need me to pull something up. You're posting it in Discord. Oh no, I'm so terrified to open up Discord though, because I'm like, it'll be like 50 billion notifications that I haven't been getting, but like are in the app. I'll have to just not look at that. Because then I'm like, oh my God, it's like, now I like, how many lifetimes will it take for me to get caught up? Let's see what we got though, if you've sent it. Twiz texted me, WTFZ, hilarious. And there's Kane, you guys. Showing up right here when I'm like, I gotta go because my voice is going. Oh, the Swedish jail. Oh my God. Yeah, that looks like a nicer than some hotels here. Y'all go in the Discord if you're on the Discord. Psychodynamic, our new Swedish squirrel friend, has posted pictures of Swedish jail, and like not even kidding. Like, wow. That is amazing. I wonder what the food is like. Look at all the amenities on that person's table that they're just allowed to have. That's crazy. They got all these amenities over there. But is that a book? Holy shit. You know, big window, big window. That's amazing. It's how it should be. Natural light. Is that a TV? You guys just got to see this. Is that a yoga mat? All these things that I'm saying, is it? The answer is yes to all these things. Yoga mat, TV, or like huge monitor, books on the bookshelf, amenities, toiletries, huge window. I mean, it looks cozy. Like it looks, I mean, wow. Wow. Yeah, I know, right? You treat people like people. Yes. Awesome. The prisons are even nicer. Love you back, Fender. If you said it in the chat, I may have missed it, how your new practice is doing. Let me scroll up and see, because I'm so curious. For anyone who didn't know, Fender opened her own solo private practice a few months back, which was a huge, brave move on her part. Let's see. Yeah, I don't know, Fender, if you answered that, but I'm so curious how all that's going. I hope it's going well. Twiz has met a lot of new Indian friends. Oh, Lord. What was this that I had? Oh, yeah, this is the statement. We'll save that for tomorrow. I've got all this stuff again pulled up, but we'll save some of this for tomorrow. So, guys, love you guys. Y'all are the best. I'm so happy to see you guys again. New squirrel friends, not new squirrel friends. We love you guys. Y'all are the best. And hopefully you guys can forgive me for streaming less, and just know that, like, I really feel like, you know, what I'm able to do with this job is actually make like an actual tangible difference in people's lives in a major, major way that like actually will impacts them. Like, it's so, I'm so humbled and like to even be able to do that. But like, it's a really good thing. Like, it's a really good thing. Like putting all this knowledge to use and learning more. And not that I don't put it to use during in live streams, but like, it's very different when you've got somebody who's facing the most serious criminal charges, right? Especially oftentimes like some of the clients that we have, where it's like they, you know, might be factually innocent, right? And all the rest, or the state can't meet their burden. We had a client who they actually had the wrong identity. Okay. This real quick, I'll just say, this was a client who has passed actually since this happened. He was like an 85-year-old like grandpa who was like in a nursing home basically. Okay. A few weeks ago, or maybe a month or two ago, he was charged with like disorderly conduct. Okay. So his family called completely distraught. Like, he's been charged with disorderly conduct and like he's in a nursing home, and the nursing home is in a different city. The charges were in Winston-Salem, and he's like not even in Winston-Salem. Like he's in a nursing home on support, like can't, you know, in a different city. Right. And it was, and literally the attorney and I both were like, I wonder if this could be just like a mistaken identity thing, which it seems like that. How could that happen? Right. How could that happen? But it was like the only explanation. So we were working on getting it just outright dismissed. And this is actually really sad. We finally learned that we got it dismissed, and I contacted his daughter. Okay. I contacted his daughter to let her know the great news that we got it dismissed because they confirmed it was a mistaken identity. And she was crying on the phone saying, he passed away last night. And he spent his last days alive so concerned about, these charges. And a lot of people, when they've never been charged with a crime, they assume they're going to jail, right? I've had people call for like a speeding ticket and they're beside themselves, panicking, like thinking they're going to jail. Okay. And like this old dude in the nursing home, like literally thought like he was petrified, as anyone would be, right? Like, what does this even mean? Like, and that was the last, that was the last energy that he had. He was worrying about what is he going to do about these charges that don't make any sense and all this. Oh my God. It's just one day too late, because she was like saying like, this would have made all the difference if at least he could have had that good news before he passed away. And it was one day too late. Anyways. Yeah, I don't even know how. I think it like, I wonder if somebody like made a fake ID and used his name. I really don't know how, but it was mistaken identity. That was somebody else that they somehow ID'd it as a completely different person who was 85 years old in a different city in a nursing home, and like, he's like in a wheelchair, and obviously just passed away. Like he was at the end of his life. So, anyways. So Psychodynamic says, I've really inspired them to learn about the Swedish legal system. That's awesome, man. Please share with us what you learn. I'm so curious. I don't know much at all about, I don't know. Let me just back that up. I don't know anything about the Swedish legal system, to be honest. So I would love to learn more about that and just other legal systems in general. It's even just so interesting. Just the differences state by state here are insane. North Carolina, by the way, has some crazy, crazy statutes, as I've been learning, that are specific to North Carolina. They should sue. It's just, yeah. A lot of people, it takes so much energy. That's the thing, right? Like, whenever we have civil cases going on, it's like, I'm literally serving subpoenas. Like I'm preparing the subpoenas. Sometimes I'm physically going and like serving the subpoenas. I'm filing like the request for discovery and all the back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And it's like, we all know like how arduous civil suits are, but I'll just tell you to like on a daily basis, be involved in it, like on just like a physical level. And like, just, it's really, you can see why they always say like that some people just don't, it's not worth it, right? Because it's just so arduous and like painstaking. But I tell you what, that is accurate. Like it is so, yeah. And I just don't think the family would have it in them. But yeah, they 100%, they, I think, would have grounds for that, but they haven't even expressed any interest in that. Now, if they did, we would represent them. You don't have pleas? That's interesting. If you haven't seen it, definitely, I'm sure it seems like you probably have, but I've got a playlist. It's also in the Brian Koberger playlist, but there's a separate playlist about plea deals. For anyone who hasn't watched that, I think it's highly worth watching because we really delved deep into the history of plea deals, the laws surrounding it, the research, what attorneys say. It's really, I think, very eye-opening, and we all learned a lot. So it's like a 5-part series. And so I've got it as a separate playlist as well. So for anyone who hasn't seen that, definitely recommend about the plea deals. But yeah, every serious case goes to trial. It's interesting. That's fascinating. Yeah, I appreciate that on one end, but also given what we learned in the course of that series about the benefits of the plea deal, I also feel like, well, I can see why sometimes for the defendant, the plea deal actually is preserving their rights. But yeah. I mean, again, the thing is like, if you look at the function of a plea deal, when you're not also if you take it and put it in the context where it's not prosecution overcharge, which, I mean, rarely does that not happen, right? If you look at like prosecution overcharging, right, and all that, trying to leverage it, and all the issues that we went through, right, unduly coercive and all this and that, right? If you were to take it out of that setting and imagine like where everything was fair, like in terms of the charges and everything, then you can see where having the option for a plea deal can be in the best interest of the defendant in certain cases. And that was I think, original intention. But then, of course, what happened was people were shitty. And then the first part of that wasn't met, which is the prosecution overcharging and using it as leverage. And that's not at all why having said that, as we covered, they do say one of the functions of the plea deal is because the courts are bogged down and overloaded and it's supposed to whatever. But I don't think that was the initial point of it. I think the initial, when they first had the concept is that it should be another avenue for defendants, right? To get the best possible outcome for them. And sometimes a plea deal will result in that. Just depends. But anywho, the punishments are, couldn't agree more. Very draconian, very, very, very draconian. Yes, they are 100%. But yes, guys, I love it. I was going to say, I could keep talking about this, but like literally I'm really losing, my voice is so going to where it's like, I wish I could keep talking about it, but we will continue this conversation tomorrow. You guys, I love y'all. Thanks so much for being here. I'm so happy to be back and see you guys again. And please continue being awesome and, putting out good vibes into the world with everything that you do, because y'all are the best. And and we will carry on tomorrow. But until then, squirrel out.